Okay, so this week's recipe is Carne Guisada, Puerto Rican style. It's a Puerto Rican style beef stew. You may hear some Elmo in the background and my daughter screaming and yelling because she's staring at me right now. It's getting close to dinner time, so that's why I don't have the alone time to make this recipe today, but it doesn't bother me much. She's always around me when I'm cooking. She's going to learn how to cook just like me. Okay, so for this recipe we need some beef, of course. You need your sofrito. And you need some Goya Adobo. You need green pepper, potatoes, some chicken base, a little bit of tomato sauce, and fresh garlic, salt, pepper, and then you're going to use sazon with cilantro and tomato for the stew base. Some things not pictured here is water, oil, and cornstarch. I'll explain why we need them later. Alright, so let me prep up these items and then I'll show you what they look like afterwards. I have the ingredients all prepped up here, so I'm going to put it here closer so you can see. I have my potatoes peeled and cubed, and I have my green peppers diced into small pieces, as you can see. I also have my onion diced into very small pieces and thin, and I have my garlic as well, done. And the reason why I make the onions and green peppers so small is because I don't necessarily, in this beef stew, I don't want chunks of vegetables. I want this to actually disintegrate inside of the sauce, so you won't even be able to see most of these in the sauce. If you like your vegetables chunky and you don't mind having them in your stew, go ahead and cut them big. It doesn't matter. It's all personal preference. That's the good thing about being a home cook. You don't necessarily have to do it the way you see it, although I recommend always trying the recipe that way first. But if you know you're not going to like something or you will like something, add it, remove it, do whatever you think is good. That's the way to learn how to cook on your own and come up with your own recipes as well. So this is the beef, and what we're going to do here is we are going to season this now. I'm wearing a glove only because I'm using something that's going to change the color of my hands if I don't. Okay? So I'm going to season the meat with a little bit of adobo. I'm going to give you exact measurements on the bottom of the video as always. I just like to eyeball it. So I'm going to put in about a half a packet of this. I've had it already generally open. Then I'm going to put in just a quick dash of salt. I'm going to put in a small dash of pepper this way, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub it into the meat. So as you can see right here, what I'm doing is just getting all of the meat coated with the seasoning. If I was cooking, you know, I generally wear gloves when I'm cooking for others regardless of what I'm making, but if I'm just cooking for my husband, my daughter, I don't. But when I cook for others, I do, because I don't think they would like the idea of my hands all over their food, so I always wear gloves. People think it's so odd. Even like really close friends think it's odd because they're like, I trust that you wash your hands, and I do, but I want them to feel comfortable. So this is what the meat is supposed to look like. I hope I'm getting like a good view of this. Okay, I don't know if it's going to be blurry if I get closer to the camera, but that's what it's supposed to look like. So generally, I just rub it in really good. I mean, you squeeze the meat so you get the seasoning all up in there. And then you let it sit this way, I would say about 10 minutes, okay? And then after I let this sit down for about 10 minutes, I'm going to show you what the next step is, okay? So now we're going to get to cooking everything. Prep time's over. So the next step is you're going to heat up a couple of tablespoons of oil, olive oil, vegetable oil, corn oil, whatever oil you use, no preference. Then once it's heated up, you're going to put the meat inside of the pan, and you're going to saute it on all sides until it's cooked on all sides. You don't want to fully cook it this way, but just going to let the meat sit there for a little while, and you're going to let it cook on all sides, okay? And I'll show you exactly what to do after that. So when you pretty much have the meat browned mostly on all sides, what you're going to do is you're going to add in your onions and peppers first. You're going to have them sweat in there with the meat. I don't want to saute the onions and peppers because, like I said, they're going to be disintegrated into the, well, most of them are, into the actual stew part of the meal. Okay, so we're going to sweat these in here first. You let it sweat up with the meat for a couple of minutes this way. You're on a medium-high right now, by the way, just letting you know. So on a medium-high heat, you're going to sweat them for a couple of minutes. And then after that, you're going to add in the garlic. The garlic should always go last because you don't want it to burn on the bottom. Okay, so we're going to sweat that for a couple of minutes. I'm going to cover it. I'm going to let it sit there for 2 to 3 minutes. I will pick the spoon up so you can see. The onions and peppers, nice and soft, translucent, and they have sweat out with the meat, adding extra flavor to the beef. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add our garlic and let it do the same for about a minute or two. This time you don't want it covered. You kind of just want to mix it around and pay attention to it because you don't want your garlic to get burned on the bottom. Although there is some liquid still from the fat part of the beef and the oil. So it's a little unlikely that that would happen, but you still want to pay attention to it. So I wouldn't cover it. You would just let it cook here for a couple of minutes this way. That's the way it looks so far. Okay. Okay, so we're up to the part where the garlic and onions and peppers are all sweat. As you can see, they're already getting small, much smaller than they were before. So the next step is what we're going to do is we're going to add in a 1/4 cup of tomato sauce. Okay. Then we're going to add in about a tablespoon of sofrito. Now again, you know, this is my way of making. I'm not saying this is a traditional Puerto Rican way, although this is, you know, very, very close. I have made adaptations to it of what, you know, it's just basically what I enjoy in my food. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean, you know, exactly traditional Puerto Rican beef stew. You know, you make your own recipe out of a base recipe. I've learned that over the years. So I'm adding in my sazon. And now what I'm going to do is I add in a teeny tiny bit of chicken base. Not much. I would say about a 1/2 teaspoon. Okay. So now I'm going to put the water in. As you can see, the steam stops. Now I'm going to make sure that I scrape the bottom of the pan just because I want to get the bits and pieces from the sauteing of the meat. So what we're going to do is you scrape the bottom of the pan, you mix it around, and this is what it looks like so far. If I pick up the spoon, nice and delicious. Alright, so what we're going to do in this point is I'm going to add the potatoes slowly, hopefully not make a huge mess, but you know, let me just step away here. So I'm adding in the potatoes, and I add them in now because I want to make sure that I'm covered. I use a lot of potatoes, by the way. My husband loves the potatoes, so I use a lot of potatoes. Now, generally, I would say, obviously, if you're making a meal for many people, you're going to use just as much potatoes. So I go off of how much water I need and how much I'm going to season from there. And of course, once I'm doing that, I want to put my stove up all the way to the highest it can go because I want to bring this to a rolling boil just to get it started. So I would say just enough to where it would cover the potatoes, maybe a little more than that. And since I'm doubling the amount of water, I go in and add in more sofrito. But like I said, I'm going to give you the exact amount for what I'm doing right now. I just didn't want to put in both because I didn't know what it would look like water-wise. Alright, so the chicken base is enough because there's some salt in the chicken base. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix this up, and I'm going to bring it to a rolling boil. So it's going to take about, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. Mix it up real good and bring it up to a rolling boil. I'll show you what it looks like when it gets there. I got it to a rolling boil. There's a difference between a boil and a rolling boil. As you can see in a rolling boil, you can see it through the steam right here, the bubbles are actually popping up and you hear the popping noise. So you want to get it to that type of boil and keep a very close eye on it. I let it boil this way, I would say for about a good 7 to 10 minutes. You want to stay away from it too because man, this water is popping out. So I let it boil this way for about uncovered for about 7 to 10 minutes. You know, every minute or two I just go in there and mix it around. And I do this way because it's like a little bit, it makes it a little bit quicker. Okay, and then after that, after about the 7 or 10 minutes, I bring it down to about a medium. a medium heat. I let it sit that way for another 10 to 15 minutes, and then I bring it down to a low, and it sits that way for 20 minutes. I let it sit on the stove for 45 minutes, simply because I have very large cut potatoes in there, so I don't want my potatoes to be raw in the middle. If you cut your potatoes smaller, they'll cook quicker. It's all up to how much time you have. You can also do this in the crock pot. You would just saute the meat in the pan first and then transfer it in with the potatoes and everything else. So this could be a crock pot meal if you want to leave your house for a few hours and you have things to do. So generally halfway through the cooking time, I will add in half a cup of water with a tablespoon or two of cornstarch into there, and it'll get nice and thick. When I get to that point, I'll record it and show you what it looks like. Now I'm going to cover it, and it's at the medium heat right now, and it's going to sit that way for about 10 minutes. Okay, so we're up to the point where we would add our cornstarch. As you can see, if I left it this way, the liquid would be soupy instead of stew-like. I like my liquid a little thick. If you're okay with this, that's fine too. So what I'm going to do is I have my half a cup of water and my 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, and I'm just going to mix it up this way really well. You want to do cold water because you don't want it to you want it to mix in properly and not clump up on you. So I've used cold water. I've mixed it up in a measuring cup, and then I have added in, I'm going to add it slowly into the pot as I stir, little by little. And I'm slowly adding it in. As you can see, very slow process here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring it back up to a little bit of a boil, just so it can thicken up. So I'm going to bring it back up to a boil, medium heat again, bring it to a boil, then cut the heat off, and it's done. Literally, it's done. It's that easy. I'll show you what it looks like plated up. So here is the finished dish. It's very delicious, it's easy, and it doesn't take a lot of work. It could also be a crock pot meal on days that you have to work, so it doesn't necessarily have to be something you sit at the stove and watch. So if you try the recipe and you like it, let me know. Post some pictures, and if you enjoy the video, as usual, like, subscribe, etc. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye!